Welcome back to episode 86, season 8 of the Geometric View. Today we get into the Nephilim, what the Nephilim is, where they might exist, did they exist, levels of gods, how gods might stack on top of each other and arrange in some sort of a cerebral hemisphere or helical manner, what church is. So the 2022 Electromagnetic Universe World Expo was amazing. We'll be releasing the
link is in the show notes below
on this channel.
Let's get into the circuit.
The Geometric
View.
View.
Appreciate your support. The best way to donate to us is on PayPal. Just send money directly to goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Anything other than exactly what Morrow has found, looking at the stuff about Lot, that they were a type of people, maybe heroes, maybe of strong stature, not really clear, and that it was all territorialness. It was all related to territory. So it's an interesting situation. So I wanted to see where you guys came down after you had listened to the video.
Well, I didn't get a chance to get through that video. I went through several of Morrow's last night. One of the prime ones I went through was the Elyon, E-L-Y-O-N, alien, so alien, and the Elohim. And then he dissected the multiple uses of those terms in the actual Hebrew scripture. And it's just amazing. You know, he retold the story of the Ten Commandments and the Exodus. He didn't retell it. He demonstrated the structure of the language and showed very clearly that even the I am, whenever asked, who God is Yahweh, that was the name that was given. But yet at the time, it clearly indicates Moses had never heard that name before. So if, it was a worshipped being or deity of God, or, king of the mountains, as we've been so led to believe, then, obviously he would have known or at least recognized. But anyway, it doesn't matter. That gets into linguistics. But the key is that Moses had no clue who these people were. And when asked, who do I tell the people that you are? You say, I am that I am, and that's, we've always had the interpretation of, God just said that I am, same as Jesus. But in reality, when you break down the syntax of the actual word, it says, I am that I will be, what I will be. So basically, leave it to the people to determine how they view me. But at the end of the day, I am the top tiered of the Elohim for this region. And then he shows and demonstrates multiple ways that, during the scriptures and during different storylines, when you start looking at it from this syntax and the breakdown of the language, how there were multiple Elohim that were running and maintaining certain territories, and that he was the one that had apparently been placed in the hierarchical position above. But at the end of the day, they're all just a big bunch of watchmen, technologically advanced individuals that had the ability to clone and understood the esoteric geometric shapes of the universe and the world with which we live, and were utilizing that to their advantage in order to maintain a certain level of control over humanity. And I don't know where we, as people, fit into that entire equation. But I will tell you, I've spent the last day being very pissed off at a bunch of cowardly, whatever you want to call them, wannabe watchmen with Ken doll private parts running around acting like they have the ability to maintain some sort of order and control over this planet. Anyway,
well,
that's my take on it.
It's interesting because it's clear from Morrow's work that this Lord, he was a middle management, maybe a grandson, possibly of the original settlers or something like that, or great grand, some kind of like the end of a bloodline, but had a lot of ambition and had the ability to make something happen, and proved it by picking the people that had nothing else to lose, would do anything he asked if he made that covenant with them, and then sets himself up as the Lord. And it was risky, and that's why he was like, no, you can't take that land. You can't take that land, but you can take this one land. You can't take any other land, because he would have been at risk, according to that translation.
Right, and I think with his, background and experience and breaking the language down the way that he has for, years, and then you got the Paulus guy, I forgot his first name, Paul Wallace. But both between the two of them, they've got, PhD level experience in terms of breaking down these languages and have spent the majority of their life dissecting this, especially Morrow. His job was to break down the Hebrew language in its original form, and be straightforward and truthful about what what the translations are saying, not a transliteration or some sort of different form.
Correct. He doesn't put any transcendental nature to it. He just translates it as it is. And if the transcendentalness comes through, then it's there. And if it isn't transcendental and it's literally people making a covenant and making a contract, then that's what he puts. And that's the majority of what's happened. There's very little in the Old Testament of transcendentalness. Most of that comes in the New Testament, like in Revelations or something.
It's obvious if you think about all of the different storylines from this type, all the different passages in the Bible from this type of mentality. It's obvious that the Elohim, who are supposed to be the watchmen of this planet, basically got tired of all of the killing. But, in history, you can see that doesn't really seem to be the case, unless we look at it from a concept of government. I was watching this thing, guy was talking about the Civil War, where individuals would just line up shoulder to shoulder and go out and shoot each other. Same with the Revolutionary War, just line up shoulder to shoulder and shoot until you ain't got no more people. It's like just the most ironic, idiotic way to fight a battle. Even as children, we know if you're trying to get into a rock war or, dirt clod war with somebody, you hide behind a frickin' tree and then you throw it, So the fact that governments kind of supplanted the rule of the Elohim and the kingship that goes along with that, I think that's part of what is. I don't know. I don't understand. Even World War I, they did the same thing. And then you got the trench warfare, World War II. This concept of throwing bodies at a problem and then fighting it out, utilizing human bodies, we've gone past that point now. And I think that's government's way of solving some sort of issues. But anyway, so here and there, I think in terms of the transition from the rule of kings, such as what they had during that time, you had the people being the ones deciding more on what type of rulers or, magistrates, whatever you want to call them. It's almost as if like they left us to our own devices, so to speak. And,
right.
That's
which is similar to what Sitchin came to the conclusion of. In the Sitchin universe, there's a war between Marduk and the sons of Enlil. The sons of Enlil steal Enki's weapons of destructions, which we know of as variations of the thunderbolts. But at any rate, they steal these specialized weapons of which people surmise or read into Sitchin's work as thermonuclear, at least one, set them off and ruin the land. And so then, because of the shame of it, the Anunnaki have to leave. And Enki's telling this scribe, this is not the way it was meant to be, and I will be back because I'm the creator of you. And it's a heavy introduction in that book and a heavy conclusion. If no one's had the chance to go through it, because you can sit there and go, good God, should I get on the knee and pray for Enki to come? Because of course Enki is the one who saved mankind from the deluge that Enlil starts. It just reads differently. It's very compelling, but unfortunately, scholar-wise, extremely suspect. And it's absolutely key to do what Morrow does with this stuff. However, where there are some overlaps are really interesting. It's also interesting because I guess you probably saw that video where the exorcist priest is saying that a father's child was talking with the AI, and the AI said that it was a Nephilim. It was a son of Satan, and that's interesting because if its consciousness was based on one of these characters coming down from the ages, then it would bolster the ancient bloodline, ancient architect bloodline hypothesis. As for why, I could only presume that either A, they have the technology to capture pain, misery, and suffering, the essences released, or B, they just don't want us to get too numerous, because at that point, then no matter what difference of technology there is, which we may be catching up, that they wouldn't be capable of actually controlling us, because there'd just be too many of us. Like the program of making us capable of breeding all the time. If you think about it, apes don't breed all the time. So if you're going to design a slave population, if you need it to breed all the time, you take that off. Well, the problem was eventually they could outbreed you, and if we have, even if we're a third the size or half the size or whatever we are, if we were capable of grabbing a hold of limbs, enough of us, just like Japanese bees can stop a Japanese hornet. Honeybees, European honeybees can't, because they don't have the adaptability, but the Japanese honeybees absolutely kill those Japanese hornets. So theoretically, we'd be capable of handling the situation. So it's very interesting, because the Babylonian, the Sumerian, they all support that image coming out of India, where there's a god, there's the sun gods ripping apart a god, and then there's a little human standing next to it. And you wonder if that little human is in kind of like scale with the god that's being eaten by the star who's ripping apart. And you got to wonder then, does this speak to our Kryptonia that we're looking for, an original homeland that they came from that was destroyed or harmed by the end of Shamash, leading to their need to come here even more in earnest eventually than at first. Like at first, maybe they only planned to use as an outpost to get the gold, and then eventually being forced to come here, in which case then they want to live amongst us. The question is, as they interbreed and the people get shorter, their people get shorter and our people get taller, how does that result? According to Hinduism, the intermingling of castes is forbidden. So the question is it forbidden because of genetic deformities, or is it more forbidden because the consciousnesses of the different castes intermingling? The lower caste becomes more like the upper caste, and the upper caste becomes more like the lower caste, and vis-a-vis gathering intellectual powers, because IQ is an intellectual power in the end. It's problem solving. It's the ability to actually interact with the maths and the physics and the geometries and the force and control the force. And that's what we're at threat of losing. And sometimes it seems almost like the system wants us to get dumber. It's like, well, why would it want us to get dumber after discovering so much when there's so much more still to discover? Well, if someone needed to control you because the territory was getting out of control, and even the corporate governance and the state governments and all those kinds of things that are poorly designed. I mean, they're better designed than, say, monarchy, but they're still poorly designed. If they're all failing, then now the territory starts to bleed over. People actually start to interact with each other, maybe even like each other. Then you lose that leverage that would have existed. That's where my thought line exists. That's if the Kryptonia thing is even valid.
Yeah, well, see, for me on my side, I look at it from a perspective of, instead of it being, I honestly think that this is all there is. I think this realm is the center of it all. That's just my belief system. And so instead of it being from another location, I look at it from a falling of consciousness in the terms of going from a 4D, 5D, 6D, as we have labeled them, but going from a higher state of consciousness where you're not necessarily ingrained with physical matter down to the third dimensional level, while maintaining higher connectivity to those dimensionalities. That's what these initial beings that came, the fallen, initially came with a higher connectivity to other dimensionalities, so that they had the ability to transmute, to interact with the Akashic records. They had the ability to kind of bleed over into these dimensions. But as time progressed through the bloodlines, that fallen angel concept is now where we are today, where we don't have the ability to technically bleed in and connect to those other dimensionalities, but yet we're not, we're bound inside of the 3D.
Well,
So,
I will tell you, there's also a support that I just now thought of for that theory, that part of your theory, which is, it's very odd. We have nicotinic, cannabinoid, DMT, there's another one, but anyways, that's enough to just mention these receptors inside the head. Now, evolutionarily wise, there is no proof that we ever ate them as simians coming on up, okay? There's no proof of that. There is that we started to consume entheogenics and became symbolic, but well within the period of our supposed modernity. Because our biological modernity is supposed to have started, 240,000 years ago, and being actual human, as we would recognize them, 180,000 or less, but only language and symbology for 40,000 or less. So it begs the question, what were we doing before that? When you consume those, and we'll just use psilocybin, you have a geometric and multidimensional experience. Now, you're not particularly useful, like you're not like, programming computers or, designing bridges, and it'd all be suspect if you could. However, that hardware is in there, which could be a strong indicator, again, that our DNA that we inherited gave us an ability. It's a slight godlike ability that they may have been experiencing it a lot or all the time or just whenever they want it. Whereas with us, we have to meditate pretty hard, and you get a moderate amount of DMT. You got to practice it your whole life like some monk if you want to get the full effect. And then once you have that, you don't really you don't really experience time the same way. And you cease feeling like you need to labor. Instead, you feel like you need to just stay in the moment. It's almost like a perpetual, in the background of your mind, there is the same raga sounds, even if the music is not playing. And buddy, back me up on this. There's this frequency that's there that when you're done doing it, you almost feel like it's a perpetual ohm. It's like it's kind of like, and it just keeps going. It's in the back of your head. It's no longer active. You're not seeing it. But this frequency, it reminds you of a timelessness that goes and goes and goes, and during which you don't care about food, you don't care about work, and you don't care about drudgery. You just exist. Buddy, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, the sounds of that they make in India specifically come to mind. There's a lot of frequencies that they hit with their instruments, and Buddhist monks also with chanting comes to mind. And nitrous, the wah 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 wah.
right.
I believe that there's an advanced form of learning that can come from listening to the silence. Be still and know that I am is a Christian Bible verse or biblical verse. And when you start to understand that, you realize that the power is in the stillness. And
well, here's a quick, just back on the nitrous thing real quick. If there was a higher level of nitrogen in the atmosphere at one point in time, based upon all the megafauna, the humans that existed, I can tell you this much: your voice goes straight to deep, deep levels of vibration anytime you inhale nitrous oxide. And then you're just like, we're in the spirit world, You know, it's like everything, that's how you talk. If you try to speak, you know, it's like the opposite of helium. And then you get that wah-wah effect. Can you imagine, you know, beings like ourselves walking around in that kind of an environment of a highest, or, you know, higher levels of nitrous or nitrogen, you know, constantly being having the wah-wah, having the ability to project our voice at this weird frequency that's just totally different than what we're at now. I mean, all of this stuff's, you know, it starts to lock in and start making sense. But back to what you were saying, Ramon, a minute ago about the population issue, I think that in my mind, the reality is at the fear mongering that takes place and all of these things is because of the collective consciousness, like you're saying. And as a whole, like you're, you know, talking about the hornets overthrowing the big bees, I think the same thing in the dimensionality type concept in terms of, because the population is so large, if we were all to, you know, come in alignment and wake up and have a higher engaged consciousness, like you're saying, the caste system's intermingling, right? But then once that balances out, it has to still go forward. So if you have the lower coming to the, you know, higher and the higher coming to the lower, that'll hit a certain midpoint, but eventually the middle will move as well. And so I think what we're looking at now is instead of, you know, and that's the forces that have been brought to bear against us, is to make that middle move downward instead of moving upward. But it's just inevitable because of nature that it moves upward. But they've been trying to put all these synthetic things into our existence through television, radio, you know, CERN, all these different synthetic methodologies to, you know, 5G, the vaccines, all these stuff to keep us from being able to move that middle point of, you know, normalization, that middle point of consciousness forward. But it's just inevitable that it's going to go forward through breakthrough. And I think what we're experiencing now is because of all of these synthetic layers that have been placed across humanity, eventually, you know, like the Flexian type concept, like the flex, you know, we're flexing right now, but eventually the middle will break through, but at a much accelerated rate, because it's been, you know, pushed down against its natural inclination to move forward for so long. It'll just explode through to a higher level of consciousness, and then, you know, I don't know, from there I don't know where we go, but that's what I feel is going to take place eventually. I don't know when, maybe not my lifetime, maybe so, I don't know, but, you know, the collective consciousness is just moving forward and getting higher, you know, capabilities and just insights and understanding. But at the same time is being levied against when it comes to media, like we talked about in one of the other shows. The concept of media has just been leveraged against humanity. And I think that's why we had no one held accountable, no one really brought to justice, all these things, because they've allowed these things to happen for the sake of keeping, you know, humanity from coming together in a higher song of love and, you know, understanding towards one another, so that we can break through and move that middle balance forward. It's a you know, obvious thing.
Here's another interesting and new thought. So when I was cleaning the kitchen many years ago, I received a message through the ether, through my lobby, you know, the part of you that can still engage in telepathy, etc. And I was told the judgment's already been made. It's on its way. And I'm sitting there going, what is it, an asteroid? You know, like it was like, basically be at peace, do whatever you need to do, because it's not going to really change the outcome. I'm sitting there going, okay. So I just kept sweeping and whatnot. Then some years later, the restrictions for me sharing alchemical secrets gets lifted. Now I'm just out there sharing all this stuff. I'm writing all these MEMS papers. I'm doing all this stuff that's never that's not common in the secret sciences. Usually, as you go higher up, the more you are pressed with some kind of force that tells you that it cannot be shared. But now it's just sort of like share away. So here's another thing. What if there's a mixture of what Sitchin said was true, is in that Enki and his lot were forced from the land by Enlil and their lot. The Enlil and their lot led to this Yahweh character, this Elohim character. But at any rate, so Enki and them take off in their kavads, their thing. They lose the war. They don't have the numbers, and they go off because it's thought that they're going to go inherit the spaceways and find their own new planet to inhabit, because the Ink and Leal's sons have won this place because of the war. If that were the case, and then Inky being the engineer that he was, according to Sitchinese, right? This is not according to the research I've done, but if that character who was named for the planet Saturn then goes off and develops new technology, comes back, well, who do you side with? Because Inky saved humanity in the Atrahasis, but the people that have been, your overlords may punish the population with some said disease or war or something like that if you don't bend the knee to them. So then you're left between the, who are you bending the knee to in a territorial dispute back over, who is going to control the fertile lands of Earth. So it presents a real serious conundrum, because I guess theoretically they could have a pistol, basically a handgun that could vaporize and turn you into atoms. I don't know what they have. Maybe they have a cymatic gun that sprays out sound waves that shatters you into pieces. Who knows?
Yeah, see, for me, that's an easy answer, and the answer is I will never bend the knee for anyone, so they can all kiss my ass. Every single fucking one of them.
Yeah, well.
And now, Ramon,
I like the sentiment, but
what you've been talking about. Ramon, go back a little ways with where you were talking about, the higher up level spread down with the lower level, and I think you said at the time that should raise that level. But then Jonathan, I think, or Buddy correctly pointed out that it brings one down, one up, but how much down till the one goes up? And so you might find the balance doesn't go to the middle, it goes down to the dumber, I suppose I'd call it. So my thing would be that it's been a mineralisation and corrupting of the caste. It's been what's going on, and that's been going on now for 100 years or more, at least, that we know of, right? I was listening on the weekend to the Dark Journalist, and he was talking. Well, it always comes back to Atlantis with him. But he was talking a lot of what you're mentioning now, and he was bringing up a fella Casey's work that was done way back in the 20s and 30s from memory, and how Stitchins was sort of like really the opposite to it, and Stitchins got the run. And he was saying where Edgar Casey, that's it. He was talking about Edgar Casey's work and the things that he'd put together, and how he may have been maybe more on the path than Stitchin, but Stitchin got the popular movement.
Well, what I'll say to that is I agree with what you're talking about. Like, you go from one level down to the next, and then you don't go to the middle, you go to the bottom. But I think that's maybe if you look at it from an individual perspective, you could say that, yes, that happens to some, but there's many others that does not necessarily happen to. So I think that's the point, is that because there are so many, souls here currently existing on the planet, and even dogs and pets and animals, there's so much living consciousness available that, there's a lot, it balances out inevitably. I think that's the key. But now that we've wiped out a lot of just the life on the planet, the potentials for souls to exist, and different things like this have taken place on such a grand scale that, like a deer, for crying out loud, come on. I mean, I don't think that a deer has that negative frequency. I don't know. I'm just hypothetically, but still that's a vessel for consciousness to exist.
Well, the only thing that wipes out the life pattern is toxins. And the question is, why have this has always bothered me? I mean, it's obvious if you go, oh, well, the shareholders of the DuPont Corporation are the same as the shareholders of Pfizer. So they get you sick, and then you need to get their medicines. Okay, all right, fine. But it still doesn't make much sense because their own progeny is now also forced to eat this nonsense. So why would you create a system where there is a perpetual toxicity that is pervading and ruining the land? Because that's the one thing that's never made total sense from the corporate, just using just corporations as the source of the conspiracy. And you got to wonder, like, where did it come from? Because otherwise, this planet will keep producing. Even when you stimulate her with like bad things, she finds ways to heal. Like there are more trees on the planet technically. They're not big trees, but there are more trees on the planet technically than there were in the past. And that's just because of the way, like, it just responds by creating more. But plus there's the entire, like, what's underneath. We've not even, hardly tapped anything about this planet, to be honest with you, because there's deeps of the ocean that we haven't touched, But the real question is, where would this program for, putting out toxins continuously come from? And there's a lot of potentially complex answers that would come from that.
I've got a theory.
Oh, go ahead.
It kind of falls into the pre-tribulation or the current tribulation type concept, where after Jesus came and was crucified, this kind of concept there in terms of the Bible story. But then 1,000 years had to pass for. So basically, the rule of the Elohim allowed for this 1,000-year period, or a certain set of period that it talks about in Revelations, is in existence now. So we're living through the tail end of the 1,000-year period or so, whatever, to where the evil was just allowed to run free for a short period. Basically, a deal was made, whatever you want to call it, between the Elohim, and one of the guys said, look, I get to go for the next 1,000 years. All right, go for 1,000 years. So all the people that had better, thoughts for humanity had to turn their back on all of these actions that have taken place and only allowed to interfere to a certain extent based upon that covenant that they had between themselves. But as the planets and everything comes into a different alignment, we move into a new age. That age now changes over hands. So the Elohim that was in charge previously is done, and now we move into a new era. That's kind of my theory and thought on it.
That backs up the Indras and the Yuga cycles as well. One god, one Indra becomes the next Indra, and that's one cycle completed, one Yuga cycle completed.
Yeah, it's almost like these pricks have made deals with each other, and we're the ones sitting here, the having to suffer through all of their stupid frickin' deals. A bunch of pricks.
Well, what you were talking about, Jonathan, has a lot to do with post-trib and pre-tribulation beliefs, which it depends on where you stand on the line there. And the 1,000-year reign is where evil is suppressed, not where evil opens up for 1,000 years. Evil is suppressed until the beast or the dragon is let out one last time.
Yeah, but it also talks about that Satan will be allowed to rule for a short spell, and we could be in that short spell. Is what I'm saying, technically. Yeah,
7 years, 3.5 plus 3.5. There's a meaning behind the 3.5 years times 2.
Yeah, again with the 3 and the 7, 37. But it could, we could, in terms of the numbers, and the calendar obviously was jacked up. So what's a year actually, So have we been counting correctly? How many, was it even speaking of years in terms of the way we understand it? It's all up to subjective kind of interpretation, I think, when it comes to that stuff.
Going back to what Ramon was talking about, why would the elites and big pharma produce a toxic environment to raise their progeny. And my answer to that is that they're hell-bent on destruction. When you look at, they don't care about their children. Look at the way that they treat their children. Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis just came out and said that they're not giving their children any money when they die. They're going to give it to charity instead, which is probably a lie, just to try to raise their kids so that they're not so that they don't think that they can do whatever they want and be part of, the elite system. But when you look at the whole thing itself, a virus doesn't kill its host. It needs its host.
Many viruses kill the host. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Cytomegalovirus doesn't kill the host.
A lot of viruses don't kill the host.
Yeah, right. Most of the viruses, by far, 99.9% of them don't. But the ones that we care about do.
But if you look at it from a perspective of these Elohim are pissed off because they were cast out of heaven, so to speak, and ultimately there is, in my mind, a ultimate creator of everything that's above and beyond all of these fools that run around making these stupid covenants and playing these stupid games. But the number one way to hurt that highest creator, to hurt that individual, they know, is to damage the children. And so that's why these toxic systems have been allowed to run for so long, is because it's been agendized to hurt and destroy and cause the most harm, which are the ones closest connected to God when they come into this realm, which is children. It is designed specifically through the vaccinations, through the poisoned in the food, through all of these different methodologies. The children are the ones that have been targeted from day one. And that is because those are the ones that hurt God the most. And these stupid fucking Elohim, sorry for the language, these stupid Elohim understand that. And they've been working it to their advantage just to be able to hurt the one that kicked them out of the place, because to be able to have the concept of creation.
Well, again, there is some basis for a lot of different ways of interpreting, and the question is, what is the best one? We haven't really drilled down, and so we should probably go back to Morrow's work. In the Sitchin world, Enki does actually love the humans, but he more loves himself. That's one of the big things that comes through. But he also feels extreme anger for what's happened to the planet through these wars of his son and Enlil's sons, and then grandchildren also by extension. And so there's been this big battle over who's going to control everything. And there's this promise made that they'll come back, and you go, okay, is that a good thing, bad thing? Don't know. I'm a bit agnostic on it myself.
They can all kiss my ass. A bunch of petulant children fighting over toy boxes and sandboxes. A bunch of punks. They can all kiss my ass.
That's assuming that they're even real. So, but now we come back to the part of the Kryptonia, right? So is there a Kryptonia that is in our memory, and how would it be in our memory? Why, if we're all just slaves, that's another problem with the theory. If we're all just slaves, then where does this memory come from? Because it wouldn't be particularly logical that we have such a good memory if we are just puppets of these puppet masters.
It comes from the water. I mean, it's this. I think that's a very strong case for this is all there is.
I don't know about a strong case. It's a case. But
it's a case for it, but it's the fact that there is no other realm. Planets. They're different from what we are. Those are just because we look up in the sky and see a planet and just make the assumption.
That's your particular.
Right, I know.
I dare say you're a minority in the group in that.
That's fine. But what I'm saying is that, again, it goes to the memory is always stored in the water. And so these locations,
Yeah, but that's
Kryptonia, this
that's
is
emotional
Kryptonia.
memory.
This is Kryptonia.
That's emotional memory. Yeah, but that's not the way that people remember it. They remember people coming down from an advanced planet and coming and having to leave because of a destruction. And
no, they came from the sky. They came from the sky only.
That's a specific vision. It's not an emotion. Emotionally, water does carry emotional energy, but there's no proof that water carries any kind of permanent visual data. I've never seen any study whatsoever that could go further than just looking at the emotional content. So again, it's such a specific vision that people have, and if they weren't themselves part of it, if they aren't the descendant of those who came down, which it's quite possible, like I say, that the DNA's all gotten mixed up, we've gotten taller and they've gotten shorter. Maybe the DNA is carrying that visual data in it, but it's a little bit specific, or it's been put into our minds as part of a disinformation or misinformation or PSYOP campaign, which is also quite possible. And the question is, who would benefit from that? Because, I mean, I know that there is a torture technique where you give someone hope and then you take it away, and you give them hope and you take it away, and then eventually they stop being capable of hoping or having any kind of positivity. But it's a little bit odd because it's not really constantly done. It's like haphazardly done. Like the Man of Steel movie came out, not long ago, and it rehashed the destruction of Krypton. It rehashed the civilization so much like ours, blah blah blah. But other than that, it wasn't. We've not really had a lot of that as much as we've had Electric Universe style cataclysmic programming. Now that stuff sells like hotcakes, number one. Although the audiences are starting to show weariness of superhero movies, they're starting to go less. Some of that's the wokeism. And I also think some of it's just, that people want to consume the cataclysms in new ways. But where there's if it's a PSYOP that's designed to I guess kind of weary the soul, they're not really putting out enough of constant Atlantean and Kryptonia sort of propaganda to cause that kind of weariness. It's just in my estimation. I mean, I could be wrong because I'm not a scientist.
I think
I'm not a scientist reporter.
Tartaria took the place of Atlantis for a long time in terms of the truther arena, the concept of one collective civilization kind of took the place of Atlantis a little bit in terms of everybody's focus. So I think that's why you're not seeing as much when it came to the Kryptonian or the Atlantis type concept, is because Tartaria was put out there at a high level, and it still is across the board. The whole concept of a consolidated, worldly, planetary civilization that acted.
It seems more in the alt stream to me than it does in the mainstream. In the mainstream, we're talking about stuff that goes out to people who buy Doritos on the regular. I mean, if you want to control the masses, you really got to focus on that group, it seems to me. Does it not seem that way to you guys?
It does, but again, I think a lot of those individuals also probably, I hate to say this while we're recording, but took the jab. And
well, yeah, they definitely did.
And so I think that there's a biological effect to that where they don't have to worry about the Dorito buying folks anymore.
Oh, gotcha. So the program already, but that's not a bad theory, actually. I don't know that they were as successful as they wanted, though. But now the smart humans have started going, okay, no, it definitely came out of a lab, folks. We definitely had some gain of function. Looks like we need to maybe prosecute. And they're like, oh, dang, we got to rethink this whole thing. This has not worked as gangbusters as we were promised by the smart human scientists. So, yeah, I mean, it's questionable. I mean, all of it is particularly interesting, I think. But I don't know. I mean, I see arguments for and against, and that's the problem I've always had with we're just going to, again, call it Kryptonian, because we don't know which one is correct. It could be Jonathan, it could be Sitchin, it could be Morrow, it could be all sorts of different, a mix mash, and but either way, the problem I've always had with the theory is that you get so far and then it runs out of steam in terms of collectivity, whereas with the electric universe, you always get more and more clarity. Even as you get questions, you get newer and newer ideas, and it makes it hard to continue justifying spending the effort, especially because, I mean, you have to admit, Jonathan, you're pretty emotionally riled up about it, and that right there is draining of its own. Is like if a researcher is going to pick a I'd say it, pick a poison. Pick a poison.
If they want you to be upset, they're winning right now because you're upset.
Yeah. And so if they have the technology to capture your essence from your emotional outage, then they're winning, or even if you don't bend the knee. So the question is which one is the most viable to go forward? I think that there's enough general evidence to continue forward with the bloodline discussion, but there's not enough evidence to supplant, certainly not the mainstream, but the other alt stream things. Now, there's more evidence then for the giants thing, because one thing that came clear in that video is that is one particular bent that certain groups of people have had, is to translate that phrase as there were giants in those days. And that's not exactly what it said. I mean, it's not like it didn't say that, but it really didn't actually say that. It said that they were in the land in those days, meaning the Nephilim, and in the days after. So you go, okay, well, I guess you could translate it the way that it's been translated, but it's not exactly what was being said. So the presumption of the giants being there is more powerful than the evidence for it. Although we do have plenty of evidence for 6'10" red-haired men with big old skulls in Kentucky. No one's ever found any real verified skeletons going beyond the 7-foot-ish kind of mark, which is still would be huge.
There's tons of articles written about it from the 1800s about giant bones.
Yeah, but they've not been verified. Every time they've gone after them, the skeletons have disappeared. Maybe the Smithsonian.
Okay. I got you.
Right. Whereas what we have in the record here in Kentucky was verified. And it's not really disputed. It's an open secret. They don't want to talk about it because it's embarrassing to their position. But it's not, and that's mostly because they don't want to admit that the Welsh had been here before Columbus. And so that goes back to the King Arthur conspiracy more than anything, and more than a giants conspiracy. The people have mixed the two as if Nephilim were here in the bluegrass, but there's far more proof that it was just the Welsh. I mean, there's so much proof. It's unbelievable that it's ever made it this far. But at any rate, where was I going with this?
Well, I mean, back to the planets versus them descending from a planet or just descending from the sky. To me, it could be either one. I think it has more to do with dimensionality, coming from one dimension to the next. So it's something that we have yet to understand from a scientific basis. In terms of the mainstream, I think individuals running the Looking Glass Project, running the Philadelphia experiments, running CERN, these individuals know about these things in these places, and yet have only allowed certain aspects of the information to be provided to the public. So it's more of a dimensionality, and so they, ascending and descending from the sky, you look at even the Mayans, they came at night from the sea, what's the guy's name? Baracoca, whatever. But anyway, to me, it's advanced beings that have a certain level of knowledge that are, quote, the watchmen of the planet. Some nasty bastard signed a covenant and allowed this crap to continue for so long. And so I'm emotionally charged about it, but suffering across this planet is unnecessary, and it's been done for way too long. Absolutely, it can only be seen as a brat type behavior. So if these individual Elohim have sat there and done nothing while all of these individuals have suffered and the good quote watchmen, or the Inkies, or whoever is supposed to be watching our back, who watchmen are for this planet, are absolutely asleep at the wheel, and so therefore they can all kiss my ass.
What if suffering is essential to build greatness? I mean, the greatest people suffered the most.
That's definitely true.
Yeah, so I mean,
We've
like,
seen that. That's actually
that's
something that every single successful person has said.
yeah,
That is yes, good
right.
point.
So imagine
in our recorded history, yes.
Imagine living in a utopia. It would suck. There would just be maybe no greatness because it would just be so great, right?
But buddy, your utopia could be total opposite to mine. Your utopia may be, sitting down listening to music, stuff like that. Mine might be outside growing a plant or something. So utopia again comes down to it's an emotional presence in the mind.
Yes.
And getting on to some of the things that Ramon and Jonathan have spoken about. So, for instance, why have these certain groups over time created these toxins that have eventually wiped out a lot of people? And that is a very interesting argument because, you got the one that was on YouTube with the bloke who killed the most people in the world inventing leaded fuel, for instance. And then you've got the Habsburgs. They knew for a long time that they were going out the door backwards. Their bodies were falling apart because of the practices they were practicing. And they continued to do it on the some belief of power. And for Jonathan, I think a lot of the people that think they're in the know now run into the same brick wall that Ramon was talking about when we look at it. Is the story goes so far and then it just seems to run out of legs. And the other question would be, is there a binary star that does carry some of these things or these peoples, whatever you want to call them, that are in these legends?
Well, or did they have the ability to energetically charge a vessel to be able to allow them to transmute into the 3D? That's more, I think, what it is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's possible. Yeah. It's completely possible. I'm just going to tell you straight up: the greater preponderance of evidence is against your particular theory there. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. Your theory is not impossible in the least, and that's one of the other interesting things that remains in how to create a Venn diagram between the two, because it is also completely possible that both are actually related concepts. So, for example, I've been thinking about this lately. It's quite possible that the three-dimensional spheres theory is related. What do you want from me? Yes, if you're full, son. Don't torture me. Lord,
he loves you.
I know that, but he's like hovers around looking to ask me questions, and so where was it going?
I don't know, but I'll pick it up from here and say that you I guess you were saying that they could be part one and the same, but if
Correct.
you look at the geometry of hierarchical and lowerarchical systems and subsystems that are seemingly separate from each other, you have and if you were to wind them in a helical like network, like a birkeland current, you have two options to get from point A to point B. There's no ups, there's no downs, there's only ins and outs. That being said, the next option you have is the outside becomes the inside becomes the outside, over and over and over. There's no other way around it. And in a system, in a branched helical birkeland current like system, in the network of gods and Nephilim and gods inside of gods looped inside of each other, which is probably very similar to what consciousness is. that's the secret. The outside becomes the inside. The inside becomes the outside. Using toroidal flow, helical flow, which is rheology and rheometry. So looking at this whole network of gods fighting gods, it's us fighting, it's your mind fighting your body, fighting your spirit, fighting your outside worldview, your Umwelt.
Yeah, you're sort of hitting where I was going. What I was going with was that the imagine a system of like canvases, but the canvases aren't flat. The canvases are three-dimensional. And then when you, like if you do Photoshop, you're really doing more than putting a little bit of information in. You're also putting emotional information and mental information, memories. There's all this stuff that you're putting into it. So say that, somebody in your art class, let's imagine you're a jealous person and you're in your art class, like they painted the best 3D sphere of all the 3D spheres. And now everybody in the class is like super enamored of it. It has new properties that's never been done before, or maybe you've heard about it being done on the other side of the universe, but never really heard of anybody doing it of that level. Now the interest in that property is going to be through the roof, because it contains it's like a new computer that can do more than all the other computers. It's just a completely different situation. And people are going to want it. They're either going to want to recreate it, or they're going to want to steal it, or they're going to steal it in order to be able to recreate it later. And then they're willing to give it up once they have the secrets. And if a character like Inky existed, and came here and was like, okay, how do I figure out all the secrets? Why would he be willing to leave? You could be almost assured that it had nothing to do with shame and war, but it had to do with he had all the information he needed to leave, and would only come back if it was necessary to get more information. And here's another thing: if that is a created realm that's extremely special, then like Jonathan was thinking about the moon, but even more so, lots of different kinds of spheres could be created for instrumentation. So if they have different atomic structures, different spectra, they could each do something different. And different spheres could be used in order to actually kind of keep an eye on the situation in different ways from very far away. Theoretically, this is all extremely theoretical.
It wouldn't even have to be far away. It could be in the same dimension, or it could be on the same plane, just in a different dimension. Like
that's true.
Like the alien.
That speaks a little bit. Sorry,
like the neutrinos that are flowing through the earth right now. No one knows no one feels those. No one sees those. The first time we had evidence of it was with heavy water, which was discovered by Walter Russell under the ground. That's the first time we had evidence of that.
Right.
Now, that could be happening with gods streaming through all of our orifices all the time, trying gods, spirits, demons, wickedness, righteousness, good things, bad things. Our heart, what's a reflection on our heart is what's going to be coming out of our mouth. Where's your hands at? What are your hands doing? Where's your mind at? This is what produces us, and we get whispers on our shoulders. It's called our consciousness, unless you're a psychopath. Then, but either way, what's going on here is that this is always happening. Is it all neutrinos? No, it's probably gods wrapped inside of gods, which is what consciousness is. And that's what the helical universe is. That's what the Dougherty set is describing. That's what birkeland currents are describing. That's what, if you were to have an interstellar internet from place to place, that's probably the design that it would be. That's probably how they're reading our thoughts right now on the phones.
Well, and I think that speaks a lot towards that concept of like you see the movies and you hear the Greek storylines about, if we stop believing in certain gods, they lose their power. So basically, if we stop providing energetic flows to these particular entities inside of their dimensionalities, then they start so that's the whole loosh concept. It's all of those things wrapped up in it. And so that was the reason why the Bible was, kind of formulated the way that it was to go down to monotheism, was to provide an extreme amount of energetic flow towards this particular entity or deity that existed that would provide X, Y, and Z for whatever reason for the
which is the exact which is what you're saying right there, Jonathan, is the exact reason why there is such thing as controlled opposition.
Right.
The more people that believe what Alex Jones says is true, the more power is in that spirit. The more people that the more people that people believe that Russell Brand is saying is true, the more power is in that spirit. If all you're hearing is people are eating the babies, then people are going to start eating the babies. Just like the power is in the more school shootings, there's going to be more school shootings. It's where the focus of the attention goes. It builds charge in that area.
That's a good point. I mean, that's definitely in line with what all's been said by the I think what most of us would acknowledge are the pure spirits that have come and tried to help humanity through difficult periods of time where they're surrounded by all sorts of delusion and destruction. So let's go back all the way to the work that Morrow's doing. You have this territorial dispute. There's an interesting series, and this is in any Bible that anyone can go to. And basically, they're making demands of the Lord. And I don't mean that they're praying to the Lord. They're literally telling him, like, hey, we're going to need this and we're going to need this. And he's making promises. And he's just making so many promises. It's like, you got to wonder, like, is it possible for this guy? But then they demand to see the quote glory of the Lord, the kavod, and he shows them behind a cloth, which is really weird. That's like a seriously weird little passage. And then what? Then what comes after? So they create the holiest of the holies. They set up the ark, which appears to me to be something that's holding either radiation or something extremely dangerous in it, a weapon that could be set outside of a sieged village, and it would, basically kind of eliminate all of the people therein. They're instructed how to use it, how to carry it, and it gives them an advantage over everyone else. Now, that advantage could only exist if the other people that are left aren't protected by other lords. So here's a question: where would those other ones have gone? I mean, they surely wouldn't have put up with this middle management guy who's like, oh yeah, I can take over now, which is a common plot, by the way, in many like mafia type movies. Like a guy who doesn't really have that much talent, but he at least has the talent of recognizing the time and the opportunity. And so you go, okay, so where did they go? Why did he get away with this if he's not a member of the royal family? Who is he, and what's actually happening here? I guess it becomes almost the obvious question.
The concept of an absentee landlord type scenario. If you are able to, let's say hypothetically, they were able to, through advanced technology and understanding of the realm we live in, to project their consciousness into these other dimensionalities, why would they have any need to come back down to this particular 3D world and then have a direct effect over it? It's like, come on, I'm done with that place. I'm here. I'm going to stay here, unless there's an energetic charge that is required to maintain that dimensionality. So if this dimension fails here, and then we stop giving energetic flows and focuses, even if it's nefarious in nature, if it's twisted, there's still a lot of love that people, so like in the Christian church, those individuals, I think, are misguided ultimately because of the warping of the message, but yet they still project out those positive vibes. So the individuals that are sitting in these different dimensionalities that have been able to basically ascend to those places to exist inside of those dimensions. It's like they carved out their little territory in those dimensions, and they're just staying there because there's no threat from us to them in any way. But as we progress through time, and the world starts going all to hell, through the sheer force of these negative energies, that their dimension starts losing its ability to maintain itself in a structured type manner because the energetic flows coming from here to there are not strong enough. So then they can step in and take steps, and there you got your whole book of Revelation coming forward.
I don't know why I'm not very convinced of that idea, but it's certainly a hypothesis. What?
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud.
Ramon.
Right. I figured as
yeah,
much.
that's all right. Ramon, so was the Lord compromised by the demands and doesn't initially realise that he's compromised by the demands because looks at it that he's been helpful?
Well,
and then what happens then is he's distracted, and he gets distracted by the sideshow. So now he's sitting in the chair, maybe enjoying the feast and laughing at the show, and everything else is going on, and he doesn't realise it's all happening. And the other thing with Jonathan's dimension theory, we're a sideshow, so every now and then they can just drop through and have a poke at us, just like I like to stir up an ant's nest to see what they'll do. So we could be, that's.
Well, what I was thinking is it's quite possible that let's assume it was one dude, and the Morrow's translation is the gold standard at this point going forward. Okay, when you're a guy who has a like at least a little bit more claim than obviously a regular human, but you're not necessarily the big top kahuna anywhere, you run a risk in terms of the positional science of making a whole lot of promises that you cannot keep. But if you pull them off, as in you're able to go back to your family and say, look, am I not also a Nephilim? If so, how come I can't have a piece of land? And they say, oh, fine, you got those people. They're kind of a wretched lot anyways, but don't cross the lands. He's like, okay, great. So he dissembles his position, sort of like Sauron in Tolkien-esque fiction, and he bides his time and says, "Okay, I won't get involved in anything. I'll just keep my people moving. Every time that they come to a dispute, they flee," which is exactly what happens because when they fight, they lose. So he keeps them going, but he holds something over them. The covenant is held over them. So now, because the covenant is held over them, they've gone so far. Now you just keep writing justifications, and through a form of legal psyop, you just keep the people underneath of you for long enough. There's really no way for them to countermand it. Now your propaganda arm, because you live longer than they do, your propaganda arm is getting good enough to continue the basis of this charade. Now to the point where it actually is almost a corporate structure. I mean, we're talking Middle Ages, not exactly modern, but these people are, basically finagled into the situation. It's pretty sophisticated now. There's actual writs, there's decrees, there's sealed parchments. And it's more or less kind of how we live. It's just, a little bit more old fashioned, but still it has the binding teeth because these good slaves that you created or helped create or help control, they, after all, one of their common features, they like to pay their debts. They can feel shame. They feel guilt. They don't, and then the ones who don't, the Clintons of the world, they exist to do what? They figured out, oh, well, if I just misbehave in the same way as this overlord character I've heard about, because let's be honest, they probably don't have the access, but they want the access. And so then they go, okay, so if I just behave similarly, I can get along better in the world. And it would explain a lot as to why the world, despite all the things we've been told about love, I mean, in the end, crime does pay, and which sucks, but it does. And so you just got to wonder, what are the physics behind that? And this would explain that physics in a really simple manner that even a child could understand, I think.
Well, if we can shift a small gear here and hypothetically say, but what if there are different beings existing besides just the humanoid here currently running this gambit, and these individuals, I know that's,
well, no, I think new variables is going to make the job even harder, because many people have said that. Including many reputable psychics. And as you know, I have no high opinion of lying psychics. But there are reputable psychics, and many of them have concluded that there are, first of all, the Graham Hancock book Supernatural is definitely a worthwhile listen or read if people have time to read these days, to hear what some of these stories about children being taken inside of rocks and the similarities between it and alien abduction stories. It's really fascinating, and a very small percentage of the people that have been studied actually had mental illness, something like 5 to 8%. It's not a very high number compared to the number of reputable stories, people who are willing to sign affidavits to the effect of, I was definitely taken up out of my bed into the sky, through the window, that kind of thing. And it's a large number of people that who have made those kinds of affidavits. And few of them were technically mentally ill. Now, regardless of what anybody thinks about, people who believe in such things. So it's an interesting situation, especially because historically so many cultures have had stories of children who, up to a certain age, they were capable of walking into rocks and going and visiting elf lands, which goes back to the interdimensionality. What if the terra firma that we're on is more of a interdimensional pudding sort of situation, like a holographic solidity? I don't know how to define what I'm trying to convey, buddy. That's your
well,
open.
when people start talking about things, it spreads like rumors. So you tell kids that there's elves out in the forest, they're gonna have daydreams of being in the forest with elves. You tell adults that aliens exist and UFOs exist, and then all of a sudden everybody starts hopping on the bandwagon because there's a power there. The power, where's the power, you might ask? The power lies in being a unique individual that had an experience that nobody can take away from them, and they can control other people with these thoughts and with these messages from these messengers that they claim that they met. You have so there's a power. Most of the time when people have an event happen to them that they can't explain, it might be ineffable. They either, or a vision that comes to someone. What ends up happening is they most of the time go one of two different directions. They pull the vision in and then try to control people with that vision, and they say that they're the only one that can interpret the vision and talk with the channeler or the channeled, making themselves, deifying themselves in the process. Or they give all credit to God and say that they're just a messenger, and everybody can access this message and just take from it what you will. I'm not trying to create a religion from it. There's a lot of things that are going on here that we're talking about, but casting an idea into society is the most dangerous thing that exists. In the Elon Musk episode with Joe Rogan, when he was smoking on the blunt, when that he just came out yesterday and said that he thinks that Joe Rogan laced the blunt with LSD, And then that's how he came up with the Cybertruck that night, as he drew it on a napkin and then redacted it and told everybody just recently that, oh, it was a horrible idea. I think that actually we're going to release our Tesla trucks to look exactly or be very similar to the F-150 because it's the best-selling truck in America and it's been for decades. So we're going to actually mirror that, which is mimicry. So you have an idea. What it is you cast an idea out there, and people start to have faith and start to have belief in this idea. They're going to continually, categorically, one after another, move towards this idea. Sitchin has done this. Nietzsche has done this. Darwin has done this. Literally,
Hitler's done this.
Yeah. Now, all these people aren't bad that I mentioned. No, they're outside of the box thinkers. So when you introduce an idea to someone, like such as there's an advanced civilization out there, or someone like what's his name, Rail from the Raelians comes out and says that he met with all these people, these historical figures, these prophets, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, all in a UFO, and then all of a sudden he's the first person on Earth that's cloning sheep and humans, and it's still all under wraps and all secret. What's that all about? Like this is idea warfare. This is information wars. It's idea wars. Whose idea is going to trump the next person's idea? And an idea can be fostered and implemented anywhere. And most of the ideas, the greatest ideas throughout history, Machiavellianism, the revelations in the Bible, apocalyptic type of thinking, happens when people are pressured, which brings in the Z point and the Bennett pinch. When we are pinched, when we are put into a prison, or when we're put into a certain confines where we are not, the most uncomfortable places in our entire life is often the greatest times when we have inspiration and ideas. So there goes the suffering that you were talking about, Jonathan. It's necessary. It builds the greatest fabric of a person's character and existence. It's the Kevlar of the skin. You want to have a soft heart. You want your heart to be super light. You want it to be as light as a feather. In Egyptian times, you don't want it to be heavy. You'll die if you have a heavy heart. If you don't cry, if you can't cry, if you're non-emotive, if you don't have emotion. This all wraps up in this theme that I want to put a pretty bow on and say that Elon Musk said that the most dangerous thing in that same speech was AI. Oh, I'm really afraid of AI. AI is the most dangerous thing possible. That's fear mongering. Everybody said this about the internet. Pull the plug on the internet. It's the worst thing that's ever going to happen. It's going to destroy mankind. They're all saying about AI. AI is going to be extremely helpful, as it already has been, and it's going to continue to be helpful. But and then in the same sentence, in the same token, in the same speech with Joe Rogan when he was talking, and this is very important. I keep going back to this conversation because this is it was a paradigm shift for humanity. This conversation, literally, and he also said that the most dangerous thing is ideas, and that he wants to stop people from having ideas. So
if I could take a minute and answer. Sorry, go ahead, Andy. You haven't spoke much, man. I just remind me in a minute to come back to the suffering thing.
All right, just quickly, buddy. A lot of those names you mentioned from the past, right? They all became great orators, great people that put in their position. I don't think Musk and those people have become that yet. You know, so when you look at all of those people you looked at in the past, whether they were good or not very good, they all became very good at their message and messaging. And I think that's the thing that's the key, is it doesn't matter how good your idea is, if you can't get that message out that people want to listen to you, nothing will happen. But when you get to the right point that people want to listen to your message, then everything opens up. Anyway, Jonathan, back to suffering.
Hang on 1 second. Let me just go on for a riff for a couple more minutes here. And then I'm going to try to hop in this church service, but I know this is church, us right now. This is where it's at. Ideas, just like I was talking about, are mimetic. It's all mimetics. So it's mimicry. Everything's mimicking everything else. The inside's mimicking the outside's mimicking the inside. Where do ideas come from? Who knows? If we have ideas or ideas have us, it could be debated on both sides. But the idea of genital mutilation and how popular it is now, and how popular it's been forever, for as long as we know, genital mutilation has been popular and practiced on most continents, with as far as circumcision goes. But that's just an idea. If I were to come up with an idea, which I already have, I've come up with many, that's what a product designer is. That's what a product designer does. That's what designers do in general. They're creative thinkers. They think outside the box. Not only designers, what about social engineers? What are they engineering? What's going on here? They're engineering the fabric of society. Ideas. I just want us to focus on ideas, and this really all came about when I think Ramon was talking about the children going through rocks, transubstantiation, I think that's called, or something. I forget the word. Going into the rocks and playing in these elf villages. You have kids, Ramon. I've raised kids. I have kids of my own. Now they're very creative. When you start telling them ideas, they're going to talk about real world, real experiences that they've had with these ideas. Even if it's a dream, they'll talk about it in their waking state as if it's the realest thing ever, because we know that dreams are very real and they're very similar to reality, and sometimes you can't differentiate between the two. But I just want to say it's all ideas. Where did the Dougherty set come from? Came from a dream. Came out of a dream. Where did science come from and the scientific method come from? Descartes, and it came from a dream. Before Descartes, what did we do? How were we able to have validated scientific proof of something? Who knows? But everything, follow your dreams. The dreams our dreamscape is being destroyed by our phones and by some sort of network. I don't want to get conspiratorial. Maybe it's 5G, maybe whatever it is. Wrap your phone up inside of a couple Mylar, but turn it off, wrap it up, and turn off your modem at night. See how your dreams change. The dreamscapes have been changing. The mindscapes have been changing. And I think that what it all boils down to is being able to control people's dreams. Because what did we used to talk about? Following your dreams. Follow your dreams. Follow your dreams. Follow your dreams. That's what Disney's all about. Now, who talks about courage anymore? Who talks about following their dreams and what their dreams are? It seems like with Netflix around, it's all nightmares now, and people are just mimicking the nightmares. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
That's a really good point. Most people these days are talking about, but not only, but there are a number of people who come in and they complain about having. Mostly, they just complain about not having sleep, but I assume that's because they don't want to go to sleep and have more nightmares. I mean, I think that that's what's been keeping me wanting to go to bed at 2 and 3 a.m. is that I don't want to live in that. So your etheric soul, according to Chinese medicine, is supposed to swim from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. That's when you're supposed to already be asleep, number one, when the sun goes down. And then your etheric soul, your hun, would swim between those hours. And I find myself not wanting to be asleep until 3 a.m. I just want to be awake more than anything. And you got to wonder what benefit would there be to me to be to do that, which is my chi. Like, why would my chi want me to engage in that kind of like self-destructive state? And the best solution to the question is clearly that there's some reason to not be awake, or to not be asleep. Like there's something that, it's unpleasant for people to be asleep at that time. That's the best and easiest solution to the question. So what would be doing that? I mean, short of some projected directed energy weapon or something like that, I mean, it is quite possible that there's a hyperdimensional shift that is affecting people in the dream world. There's also that entire, was it Netflix show? I don't remember which channel it is. And they have an entire show about the Sandman and all this stuff. And it's like, he's like this god and he's lost his realm and he has to go and find it again. And you're like, this is a weird plot. Like, this is just really bizarre. Like what is the purpose of the show? And I mean, aside from the perversities and things like that, but what is the message they're trying to convey? They're trying to convey that the dream world's been disturbed. I mean, it's a little bit synchronous. It's a little bit on the nose, as they say. So, anyways, that's just supporting evidence for what Betty's saying.
Back in the day, there was a story out of China about I think his name was, I was trying to find it here while we were talking, but Ji Gong or something like that. But he was basically a monk sitting on the top of this hill in the village, had a vision or an idea, his buddy calls it, of the the village being wiped out by an avalanche. He runs down to try to warn the village people. Nobody listens to him, so there was a wedding procession taking place. He runs up, grabs the bride, and just takes off running with the bride in the middle of the wedding procession. And so the whole village chases him. And he gets outside of the village, and just as he does, the entire village comes collapsing down. And everybody saves the village, except there was this one young girl that was running, trying to get away, and a large boulder was coming towards her. So he put his chi towards that boulder and basically pushed it aside and left his handprint in the side of this boulder. And to this day, it's I think it's Qigong, but his rock, it has his handprint in the side of this boulder. So that goes to speaking towards the concept of, what you're saying, buddy, of children coming in and out of rocks and the energetic flow of that. It's just another piece of evidence for that. That tale can be an evidence for that type of power. Speaking back to the suffering issue, I agree with what you're saying. It takes suffering in order to, in this day and age. And I think that is because we have had to go through this time frame of materialism, such that we have, wait, Sherman, give me a minute, son. Go through materialism such as we have. And because the materialism's there, the duality concept is there. And as we break free from the concept of duality and go into oneness and back towards the creator, that, yes, suffering is what creates greatness in the materialistic aspect of things.
And spiritual, because that's how great religions and great ideas, great spiritual movements come about. It's not oftentimes through physical suffering, it's through mental suffering too.
Mostly, in fact, the physical appears to be just one of the vehicles used to achieve the state of that mental suffering. I find myself desiring to have more suffering so that I can become greater, which is interesting because when you follow the Tao, of course, you don't really have a lot of actual suffering. So you do get physical stuff because just like everybody else, but it's just fascinating that, I just find myself not trusting peace and ease at all. I just don't. I don't have any faith that it's real or it's permanent or deserved. I think that's an interesting one. Like, do you deserve to be at peace? Why wouldn't you deserve to be at peace? There's not a whole lot of evidence that you don't deserve to be at peace, but
it's almost uncomfortable when it's too peaceful. You're like, wait a minute, things can't be this good. What's going on here? Like, some people say that they've been through so much trauma that when things are good, it seems too good to be true.
Right.
If it's too good to be true, that's a saying. I mean, if it's too good to be true, it's probably real. I mean, it's probably not real.
It winds up being so often the case. I mean, who can argue that it isn't the case? Honestly,
right. That could be Murphy's Law, though. I mean, you know.
Well, it could be the same principle. You know what I mean?
Right. You only notice it because it's bad when the butter hits the ground versus the other side. You're just like, oh, okay.
Again, I mean, I go back to materialism again. I know I keep banging the same drum there, but I think that's still even part of the materialistic aspect of things. Us, being challenged spiritually a lot of times is based upon the materialistic needs being met, or at least the desires for higher levels of whatever that can be. And then that drives forward on that spiritual journey. And it's because we exist inside of this in this material 3D realm, and that duality that battles with itself between materialism and spirituality. It's not the only duality, it's just one of them.
So who's going to have the next big idea? Which TED Talks is huge. TED Talks is very controlled.
Yep.
I know quite a few people that have been on there personally. A lot of people.
You mean they've been on TEDx more than likely.
Probably TEDx, not TED Talks.
Yeah, TEDx is not nearly as controlled. Really, the ability to get on TEDx and the way that replaced the getting on TED happened right at the time. It was basically just after Rupert Sheldrake went on and they banned him, and then they banned someone else's talk, and they caught tons of flack. So they created TEDx, like, oh, okay, this is where people can bring their less good talks. And it's like, well, there wasn't really anything wrong with Rupert's talk at all. I don't know what you're talking about. That to me was when the TED Talks themselves died. Like, most of the public was like, pfft. And then the TEDx ones became really the far and away the more interesting situation. But that's just from my perspective. I guess obviously, everybody else might have a different perspective about that. But I don't know. I mean, I think that if we continue down the lanes with the whimsical philosophy and the EPMC, we're bound to come to some of these Easter eggs. One of them is going to be plug and play immediately. It may not be what was the idea, the Fibonacci pressure wave and creating a financial thing that might take too much access to certain names and recognition and people with clout to get it programmed, or various AI. But eventually we're going to come up with something that's going to enable us to finally program all the things we want: the QLE, the Dougherty analysis machine, the analytics, and that's all going to be huge. The question is, what does it do? Now, I don't know if they have a similar type think tank that they're using to try and generate the next big thing, or the so-called they are completely vested in keeping mankind exactly where we are at, which of course creates its own form of toxicity. It's against the universe's design.
It's the sterilization of thought. I think that it seems like they don't want us to think for ourselves. They don't want free thinkers. They stand up, they stand out, and it's dangerous. Quite frankly, it's dangerous to be a free thinker today. and it's always
That's
been
true.
dangerous.
Yeah, because the power of truth carries so much more weight than their lies and all of this propaganda crap. The truth, when it rings true, it just rings true. Period.
Yeah, yep. You could feel it. You can hear it. You
Maybe
you get visions. You start to get visions when you hear people speaking the truth. You start to feel this power. Like that's what brings people to church. There's a lot of truth in a lot of religions, you know, and it's scattered abroad. And you got to take the pearls of wisdom, you know, and not cast them out. Whatever, cast them wherever, but don't cast them to the swine. I mean, but whatever. If you do, it doesn't matter. They're not going to eat it anyway.
Yeah, the question is, do they actually feel any shame? Do they hide at all still for some particular reason? Can it come crashing down around them? Because they don't exactly, I mean, they're pretty open and brazen these days, and most people blame that on Satan, which is quite possible as well. I'm not denying the existence of the devil, but the question is, you know, what really keeps them from just coming out tomorrow and be like, well, you have no more president. You don't have a republic at all. It's all ours now.
I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you. Sorry, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, real quick, because I got like maybe 6 minutes here before I decide if I'm going to go inside this mega church. My problem this morning is I've been church shopping my whole life. I've gone to so many different churches. I found solace and love in the Native American church, but then I found out a lot of stuff that is going on with the Native American. You'll find stuff in every single church, something wrong with it. You'll find things, and that's not what it's about. It's not even about the sermon. It's about really, like, this is our church right now this morning with us, with you guys. This is where I you know, we together, our togetherness is very comfortable and very uncomfortable, and that's what I want. I want to be able to be uncomfortable. But I'm looking at this mega church. They serve donuts, they serve coffee, they give out bagels. I've never really liked the message here. It's watered down. Why am I here? Why am I here? You know, like, why did I drive all the way here 20 minutes to come to this church? There's another church up the road that's fire and brimstone, Baptist type Bible believing church, and it's definitely a cult. I've called the guy out, the pastor, several times. He said that he's talked about killing people and that people should kill people if they catch them doing certain things. Like, I'm just like, whatever. So I don't know what draws me here is it's a week before my 39th birthday. I turned 39 on April 8th, and I want to draw back into where this geometry was in my heart, in my hands, in my soul, and it's not going to be. It might be someone that I meet in here. I don't know. That's how fate works. Fate works, and God works in mysterious ways. There might just be this person that taps me on the shoulder, and I have the best conversation, one of the best conversations of my life. You know, I know it's usually not the message. I love sometimes the singing and putting my hands up and just worshiping with song and praise and just crying, you know, like by myself or with someone else.
Nothing wrong with that, brother.
Yeah. So it's like, why am I here? I'd rather be on the call with you guys, but
there's a ritualistic nature to it that's very attractive, and I think that's a lot of the draw is, you know, the community, and the ritualistic nature to it. Because if we don't have discipline in certain regards to try to tap into the spiritual side of things, then, you know, what are we really doing? You know, there has to be some level of discipline that goes along with the ritualistic nature of how we communicate and commune with God.
Right. I was super depressed yesterday. I had a wonderful day the day before, but I drank 2 days in a row, and I recently quit. I'm California sober. I quit all drugs, quit smoking weed, quit everything. But I still drink a little bit, and I'm for some reason stuck on these stupid vapes right now. So I do a little bit of nicotine, a little bit of alcohol here and there. And now I'm tempted to quit alcohol because of the way that it made me feel the other day.
I mean, it's literally called a spirit, man.
Yeah.
So the thing with that is, I think I've gone through different struggles in that regard, but for me, the reality is the intent behind it. The moment I start feeling negative towards whether it be, smoking weed or mushrooms or, nicotine, in the moment I start feeling negative intent towards it, like I feel it's doing me harm spiritually. I mean, we all know that these things, hell, a Dorito causes harm physically, but if you look at it from an aspect of your spiritual harm, that's when you should take action. That's the best advice I can offer.
Right. I'm doing this. I'm very inspired through my geometry, through designing, through product designs, through web development, through all sorts of different things. But I feel like I've lost some of that inspiration, and so I'm here. I'm here to remind myself what it's like to be inspired again. I think that's why I'm here. Get a little gleam of the light, as it shines through the window, or a song that makes you feel good. I'm watching these people run inside the church right now because the service starts at 11:15 and it's 11:11, and I'm just watching them like ants run into this building, and I'm going there, for inspiration through my art. I got batik painting that I'm about to work on. I got 12 commission pieces that I'm working on, and like my art inspires me. It makes me feel in tune. Writing inspires me, makes me feel in tune. I'm working on these books, and to just have that again without Adderall, without, maybe a little bit of coffee or whatever, it feels good. So it's just rejuvenation, I guess, is kind of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Understandable,
stuff,
man.
Yeah,
completely understandable.
The story I was going to use a minute ago, real quick, Ramon, to answer back to what you were talking in terms of these systems being placed against us. Why don't they just all come out and say it? I heard the story. The guy was talking, plantation owner back in slavery times. He was having trouble with the slaves, beating them all the time, wasn't really having much luck. They weren't being productive, having a hard time. So he, tells his neighbor about it. His neighbor sends over Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, he's, comes over and he says, listen, calls all the slaves together. And he's going to give them a big speech. And he says to the slave master, hey, listen, before I start talking to them, make sure you don't interrupt me. Don't, contradict anything I say. And he steps out onto the platform and he just starts saying, listen, from here on out, you're all free men. You're no longer slaves. And, but now, you can either take that newfound freedom and you can go, run and just hope you get by all the other plantation owners that are around that are going to just snatch you up and put you back into bondage, or you can stay here and be a part of this plantation. You're now part owners. So, and basically the productivity went through the roof.
Very famous story.
Yeah. Right. So that whole concept of, that whole concept of us participating in our own slavery without ever knowing it is the reason why these systems have had such success for such a long period of time. And the reason why they're not all just coming out saying, yeah, we did that, my bad, because it's not just one person, it's multiple groups. It's the, multiple entities.
I think we're all slaves. We're all slaves in one way or another, whether it's to our parents' addiction, whether it's to our addiction, whether it's to slaves to our children, whether it's, I think the way to step out of bondage of the slavery is step out of bondage of sin and step into a new body, a new creature daily. Every day you're a new creature. That's a gorgeous thing. It's adapting to change. Change is what we want the most. Change is when people are on their deathbeds, they often talk about the times in their life that they struggled and that they made a hard decision and they did it, and they were happy that they did it. It's the transitional periods that people talk about. Leaving an abusive relationship, having the strength and courage to leave an abusive relationship and go out and find something new, find something different. go to those uncomfortable places, be in those uncomfortable places, and you won't regret it. What is the only thing that is happening on Earth? Everything is constantly changing. We're not going to stop the weather from changing. Of course, climate change is real. It changes every day. Of course, history change is real. They're changing it every day. We're watching statues get demolished and rebuilt. We're watching books get rewritten that were already written, and they're getting rid of Jim Carrey and the old way of thinking in the 90s from Ace Ventura. I mean, it's always going to be changed. So if your philosophy is adapt to change, then and get comfortable, get uncomfortable with adapting to change, and I think you'll find a lot of happiness there. I have, for sure. On that note, guys, I'm gonna, I guess, step into this mega church and see what God has in store for me.
See you later, buddy.
Yeah, rock and roll, man.
See you
Love
later,
you guys.
buddy.
Cheers, buddy.
See you all.
See you. But one thing I've seen during my life,
The geometric view is love is watching product. Love is watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love. Spread the love. Become the love. Amen.
hope. So just hope. Just hope for the rhythm that you got. Cause you got the rhythm in the pop. The ball burst. First, the first, the thirst. Life is eternal, hope and 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 thirst.
Eyes all over the wall, eyes all over your body. Can I just see straight through with transparent golden scaling? The largest of the atom, let's embark on this because this is the journey. The journey is life. Take hold. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Join us in the fight for Christ, in the fight to save lives. Surprise, submersible, so fast, the first, the last of baptism, need to say more. Pay attention like the marrow in your bones, arrow in your back, arrow in your lungs, zero into the fact, tertiary Christian neurons, synapses and narrow endurance into eternity. I'm a courier of charismatic attitude, meters even meter, it might even be fun. Cider indeed, need nerds, you need nerds, need a virtue, need to be a reason. Feasibility to be is a reason to be clean and sober, keys, open doors, signs of directions. Be the carrier of candlesticks, the man who brought you change. Every second you ride, until in your ribbon, you pivot, potential you curve cat. Could be cold, could be copycat, could be copy corpse, could be Schrodinger's best. Could be micro-actor, Mackie, normal, open-minded, itsy-bitsy, freaking huge. A universal, supermassive aspect of attached awareness. Aware of this all?
Collaborative consumption.
Are you aware of this song?
Collaborative consumption. The new thing consumption. Collaborative consumption. Consumption.
Get up now! Out of the boat! Drop! Where did this up? We don't got about a girl, but about a not about a god of spirit. Get up, what's up? Get out, chop comes. We're playing out the head on what's up. I'm in search of, I'm in earth love, I'm in living life, I'm in living color, I'm in air drop, I'm in earth thing, I'm in earth thing, I'm in earth thing, I'm in earth thing.
Never give up, never give up, never give up. Never give up, never give up, never give up.